Hello and welcome to the Arc at Headingley. It's a very special back chat we have for you this week. Three wise men of the game, three chairmen from three very different rugby league clubs. Kevin Nicholas is the chairman of Batley. We've also got Michael Steele, the chairman of Halifax, and the chairman of Wakefield Trinity Wildcats, although I'm not sure about the Wildcats anymore. But Michael Carter joins us as well. An apology, we did advertise that Neil Hutchell, the Hulkingston Rovers chairman, was going to be joining us as well today, but he's had to pull out because of family illness. But gents, it's great to see you all. We're going to talk about your individual clubs and some very big games that all three clubs have got coming up over the next week or so. But first of all, the state of the game. The Super 8s are about to begin. Michael Carter, will start with you because you had a very special experience of the Super 8s last year. Is it a formula that's working, second year in?
I still think there's issues with it. We spoke last year about the £1 million game, how it can affect players' lives, coaching staff's lives, and I'm sure the pressure will be just the same this year for whoever's in that. So I'm not convinced that we've got the last game of the season right. Whether we go to a promotion where the qualifiers is a straight top four and bottom four go down and remove the pressure of the £1 million game and do it that way, I'm not sure. But I think we have to take into account player welfare. We talk about it often, and yet nothing seems to get done regarding player welfare in lots of facets of the game. So I still think 85% of it is probably good for the game. You know, there's a lot of excitement. Certainly in the championship this year, it seems to have been a really vibrant competition down there. You know, there's 6 teams that have really battled to try and get in that top 4, and it's going to go down to the wire this weekend. In terms of the Super League, the top 8 is sorted for this year, which great from my point of view. But that's been a pretty intense competition as well, and obviously Salford getting deducted 6 points has affected their chances. Who would have thought that Leeds and Huddersfield would have been down the bottom at the start of the season? I would guess nobody would own up to the fact that they predicted that. So I think we've improved the intensity of both competitions, which has got to be a major tick. I just think there are facets around that last game of the season where we haven't got that right yet.
Kevin Nicholas, I'm guessing you're hoping your side will be involved in that last game and a real chance of promotion. What have you made of the 8s?
Well, I think I disagree with Michael really, because I think if you're having promotion and relegation, there's bound to be a situation where we've got equivalent to the £1 million game, where we've got a part-time game and a full-time game. That invariably does cause problems. But if you want promotion and relegation, to me, this system is very, very good. And certainly this year, the intensity of all the games, certainly in the championship, proves that really.
Yeah.
I'm not against promotion and relegation at all. I just think that one game where everybody is bearing down on that one game provides stress that, unless you've been through it, nobody can really know what that stress is and it's the whole week build up to it. And I just think if you did it on a round robin basis for the qualifiers and the 8, it takes the stress off that one particular week. And for me, it probably wasn't an issue. If we'd have gone down last year, God, I'd still be all right in this world. But there are players out there that have got mortgages for the next 20 years, and they just didn't know what they were doing. So I just think, I'm not saying I've got all the solutions, I really aren't, and I am a fan of promotion and relegation. I think every sport needs it. I just don't think we've got it quite right with that £1 million game.
Michael Steele, just on the process of the middle 8s, it's a good test, isn't it, of whether, for example, if we had 2 down, 2 up, 2 down, we'd have Leeds and Huddersfield down, potentially. And at least this middle 8s gives them a second chance. And Leigh, London, Halifax, Batley, whoever, Featherstone, Bradford, whoever, their durability are going to be tested as well, thoroughly in the middle 8s.
Yeah, absolutely. We had the pleasure of playing in the middle 8s last year. I hope we might this year, but it's a fairly remote hope, I'm about to say. But it undoubtedly works from the championship point of view, because there is a certainty that at least one of the championship teams is going to get a chance at it. And I disagree completely with Michael on this, because I think it's a better alternative from the Super League point of view that the bottom Super League team at least has a chance to prove that it's better than what turns out to be the top Championship team, if that's the way the eights play out, rather than finding that they've gone through a league process and one of them is out, even though the team that comes up to replace them may not be anything like as well equipped to manage in Super League as they were. And that's going back to the old-fashioned system that was proved not to work, with yo-yo teams and a tendency for the Championship club coming up to go bust in its first year in Super League because they tried too hard.
Is there a keeping honest element to this system as well? In that we sort of, I mean, your team were involved in the middle eights last year. Widnes were involved. You talked to people like Kevin Brown, who said it scared us to death, and therefore their improvement this year in Super League could be based on the fact that they were involved in a potential relegation battle last year.
Yeah, I think there probably is an element of that. You know, we've players still in our squad from last year. You know, Nick Scruton, Danny Kermond, all those sort of guys, and they absolutely hated that week. You know, it was great afterwards, biggest party going, but just the build up to the whole week, the pressure, the media pressure, the fans' pressure, and the pressure of not knowing, you know, am I going to get a gig for next year elsewhere if we do go down? You know, my mortgage is based on a certain amount of salary. Will I be able to command that next year if I'm going to another club? I think it's just, my concern is from a player point of view, a player and coaching point of view. As I say, I'd have been fine. You know, if I'd have walked off into the sunset, my life would have gone on, so it wouldn't have been an issue for me. But you know, it probably improved, yeah, if I'd have walked away into the sunset. But just, you know, and it's you know, you look at the bottom end. I say the bottom end players, salary wise, the bottom end players, are they going to be able to pick up a gig elsewhere based on a salary of 25, 30k?
Yeah,
I don't know. You know, it's just. It's a tough one, and I appreciate these guys. You know, their point of view. For me, it's just a real tough one.
Kevin Nicholas, just to play devil's advocate here, this system gives you a chance, gives your club a chance of getting in Super League, which you probably wouldn't have if it was 2 up, 2 down necessarily. Do you deserve that chance as a club? Do you deserve the chance to play in Super League at the expense of a Leeds, a Huddersfield, a Salford, a Lee, a Bradford?
If we go on a Rugby League field and beat a team that was in Super League, then we deserve the chance, don't we? It's about sport.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Simple as that. Whether we would be able to do that is a different matter. It's heavily stacked against the Championship, particularly the part-time clubs. So in order to beat the full-time clubs and to get in that position, you really have to put everything into it, and ultimately, if you win that particular game, I think you've deserved it.
Would you agree with that?
yeah, absolutely. I actually think that were I in the position of, say, Lee at the moment, I wouldn't even be thinking about the £1 million game. I think there's a strategy for a Championship club to get through this system which doesn't need to trouble you with the £1 million game. You look at your fixture list when it arrives, you decide which of your home games against the Super League club you can win, and you put everything into winning that one, and you make sure you beat the other Championship clubs. And the prospect, I think the likelihood is, if you manage to beat your 3 Championship clubs and 1 Super League club, you'll miss the £1 million game as long as the Super League clubs beat each other once or twice. And that's actually the better route to promotion. There would still be a £1 million game, but it's conceivable you could have a £1 million game between 2 Championship clubs.
What about the whole situation of transfers? And we were talking a bit about it beforehand, weren't we? And we've seen clubs who are signing players. I mean, Lee have signed another couple, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right.
And is that morally right? Should we have a transfer deadline system and a clearer movement of players between clubs? Should we have a clearer deadline as to who's available and when? Because that's going to count against your side, Kevin, isn't it, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite relaxed about it, to be fair. If a club has got the money to bring in a player, then good luck to them. That's my perspective. We want to reward the players that we've got. Our players have got themselves in this position now where we're 1 game away from being in that mid-eight, and the reward to our players is the chance to go on a field against Leeds Rhinos, against a Super League club, and show what they can do. So we won't be going into the market and signing marquee players, as it were. We want to reward the players that we've got and build on that. But if another club wants to do that, to me, good luck to them.
Because that was a criticism of your club last year, wasn't it? The players that got you in that trouble weren't necessarily the players that got you out of that trouble.
Yeah, I took dog's abuse in July of last year because we signed 9 players in and we released 9 players. Let me categorically tell you, we did not design our season to do that. Nobody could plan to do that in a season for me. It was just, we had a new coach came in, he wanted different players to what we currently had. So we ended up paying some off, moving some on and bringing the players that the new coach wanted in. But you wouldn't design a season around that. That wouldn't be a strategy to get you either back into Super League via the £1 million game or up from the Championship. I couldn't recommend that because, if you look at Lee, for instance, and we'll take Lee because they've made some signings this week, they've still no guarantee of coming up next year. So, they've still got to have one eye on the fact that they might still be in the Championship next year and plan accordingly. So I think I'm a bit like Kev, clubs can do what they want to do. It still brings no guarantees of where you're going to be next year.
But we had the introduction of the nanny state and the salary cap to avoid this issue, wasn't it? Because we had, in the old days, it was the old yo-yo system of clubs going up, going bust, and trying to get there, going back down again and taking years to recover. Are we not back to potentially that situation if clubs are allowed to suddenly panic buy, or not panic buy, but spend big at this time of the year?
Well, there's still salary cap biting. They've still got to comply with the salary cap regulations.
But all those are being smudged now. I mean, the Championship level, they're all being smudged and changed.
Well, they're being changed at every level, and they're trying to do different things in different levels of the game, which is slightly bizarre. But that's the way it is. But then, nevertheless, nobody has suggested that Wakefield breach the salary cap in order to get 9 out and bring 9 in. And so as long as the salary cap's being complied with, moving people about adds to the interest of the game. And really I think all you're saying in reality is, well, let's move the deadline back a month or two. But so you've got to allow in-season transfers unless you're going onto the artificiality of football and the transfer window. If you allow in-season transfers, the only question is when are you so close to the end of the season you say stop? And at the moment we're saying stop just in front of the last game in the regular season. Perhaps we could go back a week or two, but we'd still have the same issue arising.
Yeah, but I think the interesting one for me this week is if you look at the Featherstone-Bradford game, Leeds have got a whole tranche of players back in their first team now. So who's going to be playing for Featherstone this week? Yeah. Hanley, Baldwinson, Mullally played last week.
He did.
Jordan Lilly's been there now. I know Jordan's been back in the first team. So there's for Bradford, you're wondering who you're actually going to be up against, and then that takes it into the 8s. And will those players continue to play for Featherstone? And I'm not picking on Featherstone here. There's other clubs that have got dual reg agreements as well that will no doubt be utilising them as well. But I think for such an important game this week, it's really going to highlight who's going over on dual reg.
Does dual registration break your heart, Kevin? Because, I mean, is it taking the integrity out of the Championship? Our clubs are becoming puppets of the Super League masters.
I look from our perspective, so I can't be hypocritical about it. We've had 2 on dual reg, which was Frankie Mariano, who played 4 games for us, who was coming back from injury, and was great for us. He gave everything he could for our club. There's no way he looked down on our club, and I think he's thankful that he manages to then get back in Castleford's first team. We've also had Greg Minikin, a young man in the 3 quarters who's played 7 games for us. The problem we've got now is that if Greg doesn't play for us this week, and I don't know whether he will or he won't, but he seems to be doing well at Castleford, so probably not, then the only way we can have him in the middle 8s or the Super 8s, whichever league we're in, is if he comes on loan to us permanently, which I can't see that happening because he's playing well for Castleford. So in an ideal world, I wasn't in favour of dual registration, to be fair. We have utilised it to some extent. I think if it involves developing younger players, Super League players, to the benefit of Championship clubs, then I can see the pros and cons. I can see the benefits of it. When you're simply putting an older player in just to get him back fit, that does undermine, I think, the Championship a little bit, to be fair.
It happens a lot. It happens a lot.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen as much as you feel it does, but you notice it when it does happen.
Yeah.
And one of the games that Minikin played for Batley was against us, and it was a fairly close game, and you could argue that helped to swing it. And if Batley are then in the eights, if Batley are in the middle eights and without him, it'll be a weaker Batley than Batley with him. So you think, what's the point of having a weaker team in the middle eights? And the Leeds Featherstone issue, if Leeds are taking all their players back when Featherstone have made it into the middle eights, then the middle eights are going to be devalued as well.
Can you see an age when dual registration ceases to happen? I mean, one or two clubs are now taking on reserve teams, aren't they? Hull, Warrington, Wigan,
Halifax.
Halifax as well. I think Keighley got a reserve
Keighley
team as well.
yeah.
So do you see a potential switch back away from dual registration in the foreseeable future?
I think it will come. I do. I mean, we're not in a position yet where we can afford to run a reserve team. I asked Chesney what it would take to run, and he said we'd need an extra 8 or 9 players to run a reserve team next year. So with the best will in the world, you're looking in excess of 100 grand to do that. We simply haven't got that at this moment in time. So for us, we've had a dual reg partnership in the past with clubs, and it's mainly our younger players that have gone out, like Kev said. You know, we get them some experience of playing against men. You know, Jordan Crowther's been on loan to York this year and done really well there, and he's a chance of playing this week for us. So from that point of view, it's helped him get back in our first team. The flip side of that is that we needed somewhere for Andy Yates to play. Ended up going to Whitehaven on loan for a month, and the week after we suffered 2 injuries and we couldn't get him back. So there's a difficulty all round, I think, with the loan and the dual registration system. From both angles, really, you know, from the team that's looking up and the team that's looking down. There's issues both ways. So it's I think reserves ultimately is the way to go. You know, if we're serious as a sport, we need a good reserve grade. Whether we could alter that, say it's under 19s with 3 overage players or something like that, we're just struggling that we're not in a position to do that yet.
Okay, well, lots more to come.
David,
Enjoy
I
it.
think, just on that point, I think the dual reg can be reversed, mate. I think it's important for Super League in particular, they have a reserve team. If they are struggling to get the players or the number of players for that reserve team, why couldn't the Championship club dual reg with the Super League club and put some of our players in your reserve team?
Yeah, we've absolutely looked
and
at
that would help you to run a reserve team, and I think that is what's required in Super League, a quality reserve setup, not age restricted, but a reserve team.
We're actually we were talking only yesterday about next season and funding, and one thing that we may well be developing is to go to a Super League club and say, right, well, if it will help you to have some reserves, you can have 6 places in our reserve team. We'll run the reserves for you.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So too much like common sense for Rugby League to actually work, but we'll wait and see. That's it for the first part of this this very interesting and special back chat. We're back with more in just a few moments' time. Well, welcome back to part 2 of this special back chat from the Arc at Headingley. The chairman's special, Kevin Nicholas, the chairman of Batley, Michael Carter, the chairman of Wakefield Trinity, and Michael Steele, the chairman of Halifax. Kevin, first of all 3 of you are facing big games, some bigger than others. But Kevin, you've got a big game this weekend, haven't you? It's at Swinton. And if you win that, you're in the top 4, you're in the middle 8s. How important is that? How big is that for Batley?
It's massive. I think it's a piece of history for the club. I said it after the London win at the weekend. Over the last few years, this ranks, or that last week's game ranked as one of the most important games in the history of the club. Obviously this week, is still a must-win game. We're not in there. We've already lost to Swinton at home, and I've just been talking to Michael before. Halifax have lost to Swinton at home as well. So anybody who thinks they're easy games in the Championship needs to think again. Yeah. But if we can manage to get over that line, it will be massive for our club. It will be a great achievement for John Keir and all the players and the coaching staff, and it will be something that we're just going to enjoy.
Yeah, it's a great story. I mean, we'll come on to Michael in just a second on the unpredictable nature of their position, but the start of the year, did you expect a top 4 spot, or was it more a case of let's avoid relegation?
It wasn't a case of let's avoid relegation this year. I said right at the beginning, and I stole a phrase from David Ward, who used to, when he felt that we were looking good, he used to say, I can smell it. And I said to everybody at the club beginning of the year, I can smell it. I'm not necessarily we're going to go in the top 4, and we're still not there, but I felt that we weren't going to be in that relegation spot, or we weren't going to be fighting relegation, because we'd signed some important players for us who were going to make that little bit of a difference. We weren't that far away last year. So yes, it is true that if we get in that top 4, then it probably is more than we expected, but we certainly expect it to be, say, the top half of the table.
And it's an interesting conundrum as well, isn't it? Because people talk in the Championship about clubs going professional. It was another club going professional that's probably done you a favour. The fact that you're part-time meant that Brambani and Walker wanted to play for you rather than stay at Sheffield, and they've been the difference this year?
Yes. I think, with due respect to Sheffield, I think they've made a mistake there. Because they're established players who had been at the club and got them in great positions in the league didn't want to go full time, and so they've had to start afresh, and that's difficult when they've had the stability of more or less the same playmakers for, I don't know, 5 years. So I think their mistake has been our good fortune.
Yeah. The position, Michael, that Kevin's battling in is a similar one to that you were in last year, isn't it? So is it, I mean, you could still make the 4, let's not write you off, you could still make the 4, but you're probably the 4th favourite of the 4 who can make the 4. So has it been a disappointing season?
Well, if we don't make the 4, and we can only make the 4 if Batley are unsuccessful, because effectively we're after one place, the 2 of us, the way it's worked out. It'll be disappointing, but you know, it's sport, as Kevin said earlier. If you win some, you lose some. I think our league record is probably virtually the same as it was the previous year. Last year it got us in, this year it didn't. And if Kevin gets in, and all the best to him if he does, I'd hope he doesn't, but if he does, all the best to him. The trick then is finishing as well as you can do in the 4, and that's what we did right last year. Because whether because of fixtures, whether because of the determination of the players, we didn't lose badly to anybody, as a result of which we found ourselves higher up amongst the Championship teams than perhaps the others expected us to be.
And financially, how much of a difference did that make?
Oh, massive, because I think we were on 790,000, and it could have been as low as 450.
Right.
So you know that there's a big range for the few places in those 4.
And any recommendations in terms of how they do it if they make the 4?
Well, I've told you how to get promoted. I've got a theory on that. Whether it works is another matter. But how to get high up is just don't concede points. And how you avoid conceding points, you need a coach like John Keir to tell you, don't you? I can't tell you how to do it.
Well, which Super League? I mean, he's going to be taken on by a Super League club before long, hasn't he, John Keir? Michael Carter, the Wakefield, you'll be looking on it with interest because he's going to be part of your staff next year. But I mean, what you've achieved this year, we were saying earlier, if you'd have looked at the fixture list at the start of the year and saw Castleford last day, if somebody had said to you, going into that game, you've already booked your place in the top 8. You've got a Challenge Cup semi-final coming up the week after. We could almost sit back and enjoy Castleford. You would not have believed that.
I think you can go further than that. You know, not just before the start of the season, but 7 games in. You know, we'd won 1 game, I think, after 7 games, and you know, everybody was writing us off as potential £1 million game participants at best. Yeah, absolutely at best. And you know, I get that, and the transformation. You know, all the praise has to go to Chris and the players. because they're the ones that have ultimately done it. You know, we went on a fantastic run when Chris came in. I think we won 10 out of 12, including the Challenge Cup games, and some really notable scalps along the way. Obviously, the standout one is probably Wigan at home, and you know, I get all the reasons why Wigan weren't in the best of form that week, but to still play the way we did, and the enjoyment, particularly, you know, I've watched it back a number of times, the enjoyment on Danny Kermon's face in the last second when we prevent Wigan scoring. You know, it probably wasn't about the 62, it was more about keeping a clean sheet against Wigan. Warrington at home, you know, we've been to Catalans this week and managed to get a win in 35-degree heat with wanting to change down after a minute. So I think the resolve of the players has been fantastic, and I said right at the start of the season, progress for me was to be more competitive in more games for more minutes, and I think by and large the Castleford game, second game of the season, we were woeful. Probably sent Helens away a little bit, but other than that, I think we've been pretty good this year and have shown that you know, we've beaten 2 of the top 3 teams. We've played pretty well against Hull in both games. They weren't deserved winners in both games, but we played pretty well against them. And I'm really looking forward to the Challenge Cup semi-final, because we went to Warrington early doors and played well against them, and you know, they beat us by 18 points, I think. But obviously we beat them at home, so we are obviously underdogs in that game. There's no doubt about it. Warrington are a fantastic side, but we've got a chance.
Yeah.
We have got a chance.
And we talk about the financial implications of making the 8 and making the middle 8s. What would making a Challenge Cup final, what would that do for your club?
Well, I spoke to Hudge about his run last year.
This is Neil Hudgell.
Neil Hudgell, sorry, yeah. And he put a figure on it, about 400,000 to get to Wembley. So, you know, I would suspect we'll be somewhere along them lines, which is obviously massive for a club that's not operating at full salary cap. You know, our turnover is probably the lowest in the league. Maybe we're just above Salford in that respect. But the ultimate aim for us is we need to be generating enough money to be spending full salary cap.
Yeah.
That's been the aim for me for the last year since we've stabilised the club. And that will remain the aim. You know, there's other facets of the business that we need to invest in as well. We've obviously got ground issues that are well documented, and we need to get that sorted. But at the minute, we're trying to forget about all them things, because it's just an exciting time to be a Wakefield Trinity fan. Massive game against Castleford this week, which we'll have to manage our squad, I guess, because we will have one eye on the week after. Because we're in the top 8, and you know, for us that's just a massive turnaround.
Just harking back there, you talk about the ground next year. There's been talk of Dewsbury. Is that
we are talking to Dewsbury.
Yeah.
The piece of land that's next to the ground that we use as a car park has been sold now to a property group, so it looks as though we've lost that. And that makes Bellevue very, very difficult to run. You'll have been here to our ground on a game day.
Yeah.
Without that big chunk of land for car parking.
Yeah.
It's a very, very tight ground. So yeah, we're talking to Dewsbury. Hopefully in the next 3 to 4 weeks we'll have something definite, because I want to get season tickets out on sale on the 1st of September, and we need to know where we're playing.
So it's going to be as soon as that.
Yeah.
My dad was at the iconic film, the filming of the iconic film This Sporting Life,
Yes.
and he tells me it's actually got worse.
Yes,
Since
yeah.
the 1950s or 60s when that was filmed.
It is awful, to be fair.
Yeah. Kev, bonus that you're in the top 4, or potentially in the top 4. Let's not get carried away. But I mean, massive bonus that you've got Leeds as well. How do the finances split? If you have to go to Headingley, do you get a share of that gate?
No, I think that's one of the downfalls in the system, to be fair, because you don't share games. So if we got Leeds at Headingley, we wouldn't get any benefit whatsoever financially from the. It would be a great experience for the supporters and the players being at Headingley. But we wouldn't financially benefit at all, which I think is a little bit of a weakness in the system, to be fair.
So at the start of the season, though, you'd have probably budgeted pessimistically, like I do, that you ended up with probably three championship clubs in whatever 8 section you end up in. So if you end up with one of the Super League clubs at home, it'll be either Hull KR, Leeds, Huddersfield. Should end up with a pretty decent gate from
I'm not
from
complaining.
That. No, I don't think you were. I didn't think you were. I was at your golf day, remember? I know you don't complain.
No, I'm not complaining. I just like rugby.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to be in the championship and playing Fev. You know, anybody else, Dewsbury. as long as we've got a game of rugby at Fox's Biscuit Stadium, that I'm happy.
I think it would be fantastic if Leeds ended up going there, though. A Batley Leeds game I'm going to call it Mount Pleasant because I'm old school, but I think it would be fantastic.
Well, you had Huddersfield in a cup tie, didn't you, a couple of years ago, when they were a good team, when they were challenging at the top end, and you very nearly beat them that day, didn't you?
We did, which was a surprise because they were a good team, and they still are a good team. Let's not forget that. The 4 teams in that middle 8 from Super League, they're not poor teams. They are still good teams. As are Leigh and London, who we know are going to be in there. If Bradford, Featherstone, Halifax, Batley, we're going to give people a game. I'm sure the Championship clubs are.
And one of the oddities that brought out, because Salford have had a penalty deduction, they're in the middle 8s when otherwise they might not be. So from the Championship club's point of view, we've actually got a more difficult Super League opposition than we ought to have done. And that is perhaps an argument a bit against the application of the points deduction when it was.
Give us your insider's view here, because if you're not involved, or even if you are involved in the middle 8s, I think last year everyone expected Leigh. Leigh came with the lights flashing, didn't they? Because they played so well against Warrington in the Cup, and they'd beaten Wakefield in the Cup, and beaten Salford in the Cup, and those have been televised, so everyone knew what was coming from Leigh, big promises, and they failed to deliver. This year, you feel as though the whole Championship challenge has gone a little under the radar. So is it going to be a stronger challenge from the Championship clubs this year than we saw last year?
I think Leigh are better than they were a year ago, certainly on the basis of the recent match we played against them. They're better now than they were at the beginning of this season. And I think they are. I think they're in a better position to achieve something this year than they were last year. And the fixture list is. They had a proper gripe last year that the fixtures were played around with for television purposes, and they finished up playing Super League club one after one right at the beginning of the. And by the time they got to be playing us towards the end, they were frankly out on their feet, which is probably why we beat them comfortably in the qualifiers. And they're not going to have that problem this year, we're told. We'll wait and see, because television always gets its own way when it comes to the fixture.
It pays the bills. It pays the bills.
That's one of my gripes with the system. I think that we know the grid, so we know who's going to be playing who at home as the positions for. I also think we should know on which weekend 1's playing 2, 3's playing 4, 5's playing 6. They're saying they can't do that because teams share with football. Well, that's surely not really our concern. I know you might have an issue at times with it, but I think, like Leigh last year, they ended up with Super League teams right at the start. That can't have been fair for Leigh. We should know in February what weekend each team is playing each. We've got the grid, put the dates in as well.
Just reassure me of the integrity of the top 8 when we're looking at the chase for the grand final. With all the greatest respect, Wakefield are not going to make a grand final, neither are Castleford, neither are a Witness, because you're too far off the top 4 at the moment, and you've got a Challenge Cup final potentially to plan for as well. But even if you haven't, would there be a temptation within your club to say, right, this player needs an operation, let's ship all our players who need operations out now, let's get them done while the season's still going ahead, so they're back for pre-season? Does that take away from the integrity of that top 8 competition?
I guess the argument with that really is the player going to be with you next year? Or not? He might be going somewhere else.
Right.
For me, no. What we are trying to achieve this year, everybody's saying to me, you're going to switch off in the top 8s. Absolutely not. We want our best Super League finish. The players want their best Super League finish. They can write themselves into Wakefield Trinity Super League folklore. Best Super League finish, and there's also monetary rewards. So if we finish 7th, we finish 6th, we finish 5th, the money gets bigger.
What is that?
There's meritocracy. Finish 8th, you get nothing.
Right.
Finish 7th, 25 grand. Finish 6th, 50 grand, and it goes up in 25 grand stage, up to the ultimate league leaders, which I think is 200,000.
So the difference between finishing 8th and 6th for you is a player's contract next year?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, we'll share a little bit.
But does that transfer through to the players? I mean, that's important to you, but do the players get that?
Well, the players will end up sharing in that as well. I've sat down with Danny and we've discussed some bonus payments for this year based on where we finish. So the players will benefit from that as well. But I think more than money, they're striving to be the best Wakefield Trinity side that has entered a Super League competition in the last 21 years. So that for us, certainly it works for me, and I'm sure it does for Chesney and the coach as well. We want to be the best we can be this year.
Okay, lots more to come on this this back chat special from the Arc at Headingley with our three wise men, the three chairmen from the three, I was going to say Super League clubs, potential Super League clubs, one Super League club and two potential Super League clubs coming up in the final part in just a few moments' time. Welcome back to this back chat special from the Arc in Headingley, the three wise men, or three of the wise men, because there are lots of wise men in Rugby League, at least that's what we're led to believe. Three chairmen: Kevin Nicholas, the chairman of Batley; Michael Carter, the chairman of Wakefield Trinity; and also Michael Steele, who's the chairman of Halifax. We'll start with you, Michael. I mean, one question that always baffles me is, why do you fellas do it? You know, I mean, you seem to be, if you're on Twitter like he is, you're getting abuse all the time. You go to fans forums, you're getting abuse all the time. And all you're trying to do is trying to make the club better. So why do you do it?
I suspect, I'm sure the same applies to the other two, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm a supporter who got dragged in. And it's like a whirlpool. Once it's sucked you in, it's awfully difficult to struggle out of it. I've been trying to find somebody to take this job on from me for 4 or 5 years, and every now and then we apparently think we're nearly there, and then they say, but you will stay on, won't you? And suddenly I'm there and they've gone. And that's how it's been as far as I'm concerned.
And Kev, you've been at Batley for, 62 years now, is it? It's a long time. It seems a long time.
20 years next year.
Right.
So we're having a party next year in Super League.
At Headingley.
I'm probably similar to Michael, really. I just love the sport. As a supporter, just dragged in, as Michael said. I wouldn't swap it for the world. My wife would, but I wouldn't swap it for the world. When you experience the highs, then you've got to be prepared to experience the lows. Put them together, and overall, it's not too bad.
Given your experience then and your involvement at the heart of the game for 2 decades, are you more optimistic about the future of the game now, or less optimistic, or about the same?
I think more optimistic, because if you're not optimistic, there's no point being in the game. We don't want pessimists in the game, do we? But I do feel at the moment there's a excitement within the sport. Obviously there are downsides. I think the most important thing for our sport is that we beat the Aussies, isn't it? Or we win the World Cup, or we win the Four Nations. That would kickstart our sport, I think, into a better era. When we're going to do that, hopefully not too far in the future, but as a sport, I think that's what needs to happen. And I know if we can stage the World Cup in 2021, is it? That will be another boost to the sport after the last World Cup. So generally, I think we are in a better position than we were 20 years ago. But there are downsides as well. I still think there's too many Australians in our Super League. We have got a very big, a shortage of centres, for example.
Yeah.
And to me, the only way you're going to get more centres is if more English centres play the game at the highest level. And it's shown in soccer, isn't it? There's far too many foreigners in the Premier League, so the English team suffers. And I think rather than trying to fill the Super League teams with marquee players from abroad, we need to be trying to develop. And I know that a lot of clubs are trying to develop their own because it's cheaper. But that's what we need to be striving to do.
Michael Carter, do you regret the day you walked in at Wakefield?
The analogy of the whirlpool is very apt. I think you tend to not be able to get out of it. It's going that fast. I was a little bit different because I wasn't actually a supporter of Wakefield Trinity. I'd lived in Wakefield since 1985, but I was brought up as a black and white at the back of the boulevard. So loved rugby league. We'd got to a point with the history of the club, where if myself and Chris Brayton hadn't stepped forward, the club was going pop. We felt we had a chance to turn it around and just run it properly with our business heads on, rather than getting overcome by the emotion of the oval ball in the middle of the grass pitch. And we've managed to do that. Now, it's been really tough for 2.5 years. I think Kevin's right that the highs tend to mask. You get far more lows, I think, than you do highs, but the actual intensity of the highs are fantastic. You know, everybody saw my emotion at the end of the £1 million game. I was just about to leap off the balcony. So, you know, and moments this year, again, the Wigan game, the Warrington win in the last minute, the Catalans win, Catalans win at Magic Weekend. You know, fantastic moments for us. So I think that's what you kind of live off, is those fantastic highs that you get. And it's really difficult running any rugby league club. You know, you get a small minority that do just want to abuse you, and I have to say it is a very, very small minority. I think that certainly our fans, 99% of them get where we have been and where we are currently at. So, you know, they're a good group, really, but you always get, you tend to hear the minority the loudest, don't you? So I think that's part of the game that I could live without, but I put myself out there on Twitter, so I've got to expect the abuse at the same time.
It's always a mistake going on Twitter.
Yeah.
Just talking about the general profile of the game and the general health of the game, I'm pointing at you, but you might not be involved in this, but you probably will next year. Toulouse are going to be involved. All things being equal, it looks like they're going to get promoted. We had a special with Eric Perez from Toronto recently as well. So is this to be welcomed? Is this or I mean, if Gary Schofield was here, he'd tell us we should concentrate on what we do best, and that's with the clubs that already exist. Or does the game have to expand?
I think long term the game has to expand. I've never understood why it hasn't been a hit in North America right from day one, because it's so obviously the sort of game that you'd have thought North Americans would enjoy. But going back on Toulouse, I can see the logic of having two strong teams in France if the French game is ever going to develop, and we do need a domestic international competition that we can have mid-season with somebody who can give England a game. I prefer it to be Great Britain, but that's another story. But to give us a game, and that probably does need at least one more French team that have a lot of Frenchmen in, and the only way we're going to get that is by encouraging them. Toulouse in the Championship previously was fine, but it began to get something of a bore because they just weren't good enough. You know, so having them there and having them down at the bottom of the league wasn't any good. It looks as if the new structure at Toulouse is going to actually be competitive in the Championship, and as long as they are, then they'll probably add something to it.
Yeah, and if you're not basking in the sunshine of Super League next year, if you are still involved in the Championship, and do you welcome a Toulouse coming in?
If they're full of French players, yeah. Because Michael's touched on it. To me, the whole concept of Toulouse has got to be to improve the game in France, so that we've got better clubs in the Northern Hemisphere. If Toulouse are going to fill their team with Aussies or whatever, then I think it's a waste of time. But if they can get French players in, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because
which is what they've done so far, haven't they? Their intentions look good so far.
Yeah.
More than Catalan.
And then obviously the Canadian club, to begin with, they're going to have to, which is what they're doing, get in players from this country, but they need to, as quickly as possible, develop the Canadian element. Because if we're going to expand over there, it's got to be their people, not us sending players there. In the same way that we shouldn't be importing all the Aussies here, they shouldn't be importing all the Brits or the Aussies there. I think that's the secret, how you're going to develop. But having said that, I still think we also do need to strengthen as best we can the domestic competition, the existing clubs. The Super League at the moment is a little, I think turbulence is probably too strong a word, but Blake Solly having left, the search is on for a new general manager of Super League. Are you confident that the clubs can remain united in Super League? We've already heard Marwan Kukash saying break away from the RFL. There's been mutterings behind the scenes at other clubs. Do you feel the clubs are united at the moment?
I think each individual club has obviously got grievances of their own, but I think we are more united than divided at this moment in time. Marwan came out with that publicly, and I think that was a bit of a mistake to do that, in all honesty. I never thought he was going to get the full backing of the other 11 clubs. I have issues that I take up with Nigel and Ralph on a weekly basis, but we do it behind closed doors, and we do it in the right way.
Do just open up. What grievances do you have?
My big one at the minute is the whole disciplinary match review panel experience that we've kind of had this year. I think there's a lack of consistency, and at times a lack of competency within that process. And I don't mean incompetent people, I mean people that possibly don't understand the modern game, modern tackle techniques, and that sort of thing. So this is nothing that I haven't said to Nigel and Ralph, and I've probably chunted a little bit publicly about it as well. So that's probably my biggest grievance at this moment in time. But just going back to Toulouse, we played them this year. Fantastic, very friendly outfit. A lot of French players in the side as well. We actually inquired about a couple for next year because they impressed us. I think going back 10 years, and this is obviously before my time, but Catalans came into the competition with two aims as far as I was concerned: to improve the French national team. Well, no, that hasn't happened. No. And to bring extra TV monies in. Well, no, that hasn't happened either. So I think, and don't get me wrong, I love going to Catalans. I love Catalans club. Christophe and Bernard, I get on really well with them. But I think at this moment in time, they're kind of failing of what they were supposed to bring to Super League. So they need to have a look at themselves as well, because there are French players out there. We've got Mika Simon, obviously Morgan Escaré struggled for a game at times this year. I think there was 12 in the side at the weekend. So there are players there, and I think it goes back to Kev's point, why are we relying on Aussies coming over here for what is essentially a final payday?
Just to play devil's advocate again here, I mean, the Catalan argument would be, well, we might not be bringing direct money in, but what are Wakefield bringing in? What are Salford bringing in? What are Widnes bringing in?
That's a very valid point, Dave. I get that. We're not contributing as much as we should be to the Super League table. I absolutely appreciate that point. But all I'm going on is what was said 10 years ago. Again, before my time. But that were as far as I'm aware, those were the two remits that they were supposed to be bringing to the table. Yeah. Now look at the team that they had last weekend. Lucas Albert, young 18-year-old halfback, played really well in the game. But they've got Todd Carney, they've got Richie Myler, they've got Thomas Bost, who generally will be in front of him. Now, if we want the French team to perform well, they need halfbacks that are going to be playing. Lucas Albert surely is one of those that needs to be playing regularly. So the French kids need to play.
Just on that question of responsibility that clubs have to the game, I mean, is that something that you think about as chairman in the Championship, or is it simply a matter of surviving as clubs?
If I'm honest, it's about surviving as clubs, but I do think we need to participate fully in the RFL processes, such as they are, and we do, and certainly Kevin does. There are some clubs at Championship meetings who you wonder why they've turned up, because you never hear them say anything. I don't think it applies to either of us, does it, Kevin?
Do you have that responsibility to Rugby League? Do you feel?
I think so, yeah. It probably doesn't arise that often, but I would like to think we have a wider perspective. But obviously, everybody concentrates on their own club. That's your first priority. But beyond that, I think you do need a wider perspective, and if you have a meeting where you vote on something, obviously you've got your own club's interests at heart generally, but I think you ought to look a little bit wider than that and look at what's best for the sport.
Yeah,
there is. And I think people do.
Yeah. I think it's very important that we should try to develop the game in our own vicinity, amongst our own community clubs, because the key thing that gets missed all through the story of Rugby League is participation. We need an awful lot more lads playing the game. We need to keep them playing the game longer, and we need to stop them dropping out of Super League, particularly scholarships at 19, when they've actually got a lot of talent and they can play the game a lot longer if they're given the opportunity.
Okay, well, we heard from Kevin saying he was optimistic. After 20 years in the game, he remains optimistic about the future. So just briefly, because we're coming towards the end, Michael Carter, as the chairman of Wakefield, as someone involved in Rugby League, are you optimistic about the future of Rugby League?
Yeah, I think we've got a real chance. For me, it's still the greatest game to watch. I mean, I've never played the game, but it's a fantastic spectacle to watch. I've been to Batley this year, and I paid Kevin to get in. So, but I watched Batley and Bradford, and we had 2 games against Halifax last year, which were fantastic games both times. So for me, it's still the greatest sport to watch.
And Michael Steele, you optimistic as well?
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I think things are going forward, and we've got to keep looking forward and being optimistic.
Okay, well, we'll finish on that optimistic note, but just a quick reminder of what you can see on this channel over the next weekend in terms of the NRL. Some fabulous games to look forward to as well. Starting on Friday, the 22nd of July, that's tomorrow if you're watching us live, Broncos against the Panthers at Suncorp Stadium, that's 10:50. Then on Saturday, 3 games, the Raiders against the Warriors, the Titans against the Eels, the first of those games 6 o'clock, the second 8:30, and then to finish that triumvirate of Saturday matches, the Storm against the Roosters at Amy Park, that's a 10:30 start. Not enough? Well, how about Sunday? Sharks against the Knights at Shark Park, the best named ground in the world. That's a 5 o'clock start. These are all live, by the way. And the Dragons against the Tigers at the ANZ Stadium is at 7 o'clock, where England will be playing Lebanon, we heard this week, in November in the World Cup. And then on Monday, it's the Rabbitohs against the Sea Eagles at the Allianz Stadium, and that is a 10 o'clock start on Premier Sports. And don't forget the website. You can check all this and more at www.premiersports, don't forget the S, premiersports.tv, www.premiersports.tv. So that's as far as we go. Thanks very much for joining us for a very special back chat today from the Arc at Headingley. A big thank you to Kevin Nicholas, the chairman of Batley, to Michael Carter, the chairman of Wakefield Trinity, and also to Michael Steele, the chairman of Halifax. Till we meet again, a very goodbye.